We need to know that only Jehovah knows the exact time, the exact place that this is going to start, how it's going to happen. And for those who want to pretend that they know, that they have read God's mind, that they have figured out what it is and what it is, the buzzer just got blown. Because we don't know. And we can't guess. And I will almost bet you, see, this is where I'm stepping over the line, okay? This is where I'm stepping over the line. I will almost guess that anybody that guesses the time, first of all, you already know that's not the right time. But I will bet that he's holding this little time over here, that he knows where it is, and not letting anybody else guess that time. He has that power. Nobody knows. Nobody can tell. All right, that's 2. 3. We are to be his witness in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and even to the remotest parts of the earth. How many times in the last month have you heard that? Too many? I'm not done with it yet. So don't even think. All right, so there are not a whole lot of sermons that are presented regarding the baptism of the Holy Spirit thing, unless you are in a Pentecostal or the other one just went out of my head. You all know what I'm talking about. Unless you're in one of those kinds of churches, one of those kinds of congregations, they get a lot of these sermons. But if you get into the mainline Baptist church, Methodist church, Episcopalian, you don't hear a lot about it. Because it's too divisive. And it gets us into all kinds of difficulties. Just know that when you are baptized by the Holy Spirit, this baptism of the Holy Spirit thing, it's a thing that deals with your heart, with your soul, with your spirit, with your being. And I would venture to say that at some point in just about every Christian's life, we have had this point in time when you have felt the presence of the Holy God in your soul. You just kind of like a feeling that comes up and comes. You ever felt that feeling in your head where your head just kind of tingles and, you know there's something special. The one who is salvation spoke of this baptism 4 times in his ministry that is presented in the gospel. The first one, the first 2, Matthew 13:11 and Mark chapter 1, verse 8. The passages both present the baptism of Yehoshua as he is preparing to go into the wilderness for 40 days of intense temptation. How many of us, I've asked this question the last few weeks before too, but I'm going to ask you again. How many of us, if you read what's written, especially in Matthew, if you read what is written, how many of us could go through that? How many of us could stand on the pinnacle and tell Satan why you're not going to jump off the pinnacle? Oh yeah, if I jump off the pinnacle, God will save me. Maybe not. Maybe not. You know, the one that intrigues me the most is I will give you these kingdoms and this wealth. Do you know what happened? If you read, Jesus talks about people who have wealth. Very, very few of us, and I'm saying us, I'm one of them, but very, very few of us could handle immense wealth and still be a dedicated servant of Jesus Christ. I have a list. How many magnificent classic cars would I have in this huge garage over here if I had unlimited financial means? But then you stop and you think about it, what good is that? What good is that? Right now I have 3 vehicles that are sitting in various states of disrepair. You can only drive one car. Did you know that? You can only drive one car at a time? My family loves to tell me that sometimes. You can only drive one at a time. And the cost of keeping the others up, that's why they're in various states of disrepair. Like one needs a carburetor, the other one had the brakes torn apart, and the third one, and we've been working on for how many years? 20 years? It's still not running. If we can't handle it. Because then we forget that our purpose is to meet the criteria of bringing others to the knowledge and saving grace of Jesus Christ. And if you are so wrapped up in what you're doing with the funds that you have that you never even think about it, what good are you to the kingdom? Okay? I know I couldn't afford it. Spiritually, I couldn't afford it. I think each one of us knows pretty much. It is inconceivable to me that Satan should be gullible enough not to know that the one to whom he is speaking about jumping off the pinnacle or managing the great wealth of the world, or the one that he is speaking to is the only one that he cannot ever deceive. Satan can get into your mind. He can't control your mind. So, if the dove descends from the clouds and along with a voice that says, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased," the one whose soul, the one whose very life is me, and yet Satan is there and takes him off to temptation and tries to get him to do his bidding. It's inconceivable to me. John the Baptist announced it like this. He says, "There is one who comes after me, who is the Lamb of the Holy One, who takes away the sin," not the sins, the sin of the world. He takes away the sin of the world. There is truly but one sin, and that sin is disbelief, disobedience, because that sin is the one that overshadows everything else, and everything else falls into that. If we could all conquer this disbelief, because many of us have gone through periods when we know that he exists. We know that he has saved our soul. But we go through these periods and we're going, wait a minute, is that really true? I haven't felt like it for a while. And disobedience, I don't even want to talk about that one. We can go on forever. We can do Billy Graham sermons on that one. I'm not Billy Graham. So, the salvation, the Yehoshua who comes to baptize the nefesh, the soul, the spirit. Nefesh is one of those words that you cannot translate. We try to translate it. We either call it the soul or the spirit or the breath or something, but it's one of those words. It encompasses the actual life being of humanity. It makes us different from everything else. It is what makes us so that we belong. We belong to the Holy One, the soul. And it is that, the fire, that is a picture of power that takes us under his wing, that makes us belong to him, that keeps us, even in the times of temptation and doubt, makes it so that we come back, we know who he is. One of my nephews calls it the crisis of faith. It's a crisis of faith because you know, but you can't quite grasp it sometimes. "10 days after the ascension is the day of Pentecost, because it's 50 days. Yeah, 50. 5, 10, no. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I can't count that way. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. It's 50 days from the resurrection. Which, by the way, comes on which day of the week? Anybody? First day. I don't know why. I don't know why. 7 times 7 is 49. Right? 7 times 7 is 49. This is 50 days. Doesn't change the day of rest, okay? Just so that you know, doesn't change the day of rest. However, it is one of the things that gets us all confused and messed up. But it is. It's 50 days. It's Pentecost. 50 days. When the promised baptism with the Holy Spirit is to be bestowed upon all. Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. If you can't laugh at yourself, you're in bad shape, right? Okay, so all through Acts 2, although Acts 2, 7, and 13 have divergent views of the day of Pentecost, now let's look at that for a second so we know what we're talking about. This time I am on chapter 2. I wish I could show you this on the board, but I can't. Not that smart yet. But chapter 2, you go to verse 7. "And they were amazed and marveled, saying, Why are not all of those who are speaking Galileans?" And then you go down to 13 and it says, "But others were mocking and saying they're just full of sweet wine." Two different divergent views of it. Two different divergent views of what's going on. And among the devout Jews who were living in Jerusalem, gives support to the directive in Matthew 28 and Mark 16 that we talked about last week. And in chapter 1, verse 8, where it says, you shall receive power and you will be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and even to the remotest parts of the world. Peter was sent to Joppa to share the word with the uncircumcised as the Holy Spirit made his presence known to people outside of Judaism. The same gift of Pentecost was showered so that both the baptism by water and the baptism of the Holy Spirit could be shared with these non-Hebrew people. But as I have shown you before in the past, this is not really a new thing. Jehovah told us, when you do it to your family, you also need to incorporate into your family. When you perform circumcision on your family, you have to incorporate into your family those Goya, those nations who are working for you, who are living with you, who are your servants, who are your slaves. All of them, the people that live in your community, all of them have a pathway into his being. Now, here stands the question that requires both physical and verbal response. Is baptism a requirement for salvation? Now, we can get into real arguments over this. If you read chapter 20, I don't think I can get to Matthew that fast, but I'm going to try. Matthew 28. I'm in Luke 3. I'm getting there. There we are. Matthew 28. Nope, that's Mark 16. Never mind. Matthew 28. There we are. All right. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I command you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the ends of the earth. He is telling us that he wants us to follow the example of Jesus Christ. But what about those last-minute conversions? Do you know there are people allergic to water? I forget what it's called. I had it 2 days ago. I had that name right here. There are people who are allergic to water. If you drip water on them, they blister up. Are we supposed to put them in pain? I'm not telling you not to baptize. I am not telling you that. Okay? But I'm also not going to get in the argument. We are supposed to follow the directive and the example of Jesus Christ. We know that we have to respond to the presence of Yehoshua in our lives if we are going to proclaim his power. Isn't baptism and the response to baptism a sign of his working in our lives? What form does this sign have to take? That's the theological question for the ages. So if you were expecting to get an answer, sorry I disappointed you. The second instruction is one that we often observe those who call themselves faithful attempting to explain away. There are a plethora of happenings and circumstances where we observe and give ourselves hope that what we call the day of the Lord is here, now. In Acts 1:7 and Matthew 24:36, they tell us that it is, just as here, they tell us it is not possible to know the time that he will take us home. Not only do we not know the time that he is going to come back, we don't know when he's going to take us home. See, in the day of Noah, there was rain. But there was still partying going on out there in the world while Noah was taking the animals in and closing the doors. And those people out there had no idea. But guess what? Noah didn't either. God didn't tell Noah. He said, get the animals on board. The time is imminent. As evil as things are, the majority of the populace will not even begin to recognize the I in the I should have seen that coming. Because it's just going to happen. So do we just stand idly by while folly continues because we are warned against trying to figure out the day or the time? Are we just supposed to be standing idly by and pretending like, oh well, when it happens, it will happen? May it never be. In Ezekiel chapter 33 verses 1 through 9, if you have not heard that sermon, I'm not preaching it today, but if you have not heard that sermon, it's a very easy sermon. Write that down. Ezekiel 33, 1 through 9. And some of you are going to read it and go, oh yeah, I remember this. They've even preached it at camp. But this, Ezekiel 33, 1 through 9, reminds us that we are still responsible to warn other people of what is the expectation of the Holy One. This often leads us back to the problem of being overly concerned with what other people think because I don't want to be called the fool. Well, guess what? The foolishness of, have you heard this one before? The foolishness of man is the wisdom of God. You heard that one before? The foolishness of man is the wisdom of God. You can look it up. I'm not going to tell you where that one is. You can look it up. The foolishness of man. Maybe I said that backwards. Thank you. I can't say it the right way then. The wisdom of man, no. The wisdom of God is the foolishness of man. Thank you. I had to look at Susan. Sometimes. All right. Either way, if you put those words together in there, the foolishness, God, wisdom, and God, you will come up with it. Promise you. You will come up with it. do we know what is correct and what is incorrect thought? Mark chapter 13. Mark chapter 13, verse 32. But of the day or the hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. Take heed, keep on the alert, for you do not know when the appointed time is. It is like a man away on a journey, who upon leaving his house and putting his slaves in charge, assigning each one to his task, also commanded the doorkeeper to stay on the alert. Therefore, be on the alert, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, whether it's in the evening, at midnight, at cock crowing, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, be alert. Understand that there is a need to take heed and to not get lost in fear. There's a need to take heed and not get lost in complacency. There's a need to take heed and understand that the seasons change and they will come and they will go, but I am responsible for what I know, for what I share, for what I hide, for what I do not tell. I'm responsible for all of that. Do I know the difference between fact and opinion? Here's an easy way to do it. Fact is knowledge. Fact is knowing. Fact is provable. Opinion is gossip. Opinion is gossip. See, gossip isn't just talking about other people. Gossip is talking about other things that are not true. Am I sure that I have my house protected? And what does protected look like? What is it that he is telling us here? What is it that we need to be doing? Because heaven and earth will pass away, but the words of the Holy One will not pass away. And he's teaching these words so that at least we have some semblance of attempting to stay within his will, even when we know we're not. See, that's one of those problems that we have. We get outside the will and then we think, oh well, everything is lost. Everything is not lost. You can stop. You can stop and you can turn back and you can say, okay, I screwed up, I messed up. Now I have to straighten up. And then tomorrow you go back and you go, psh, man, people are weird. If I am not dwelling on his words when I rise up, when I lie down, when I walk in the way, then I have no hope of doing what he wants us to do. You know what? You know why it was easier? I'm convinced. I'm convinced that before all the modernization and living in these big fancy world that we live in with these wonderful vehicles and whatever else there is out there, I'm convinced that before that, when everything in our community was based on the church, it was easier. It was easier. What are you going to do this Saturday night? Oh, the church is... We have a Bible study on Wednesday night. Yeah, I'll be there. What else am I going to do? We have too much entertainment. We have too much distracting us. I'm not going to be the preacher that stands up here and tells you that movies are our sin, and that all these other things, these entertainment things that we have are sin. I'm not going to tell you that. But I can certainly understand why people do say it. What distracts you? What distracts you from having your every thought dwell upon the holiness of God? Man, that is boring. You are actually going to tell me that is so incredible. Boring. Boring. Or is that just where we put our minds? I will say it's difficult. It's extremely difficult. So just before his ascension, just before he left his visible presence among the created ones, he reiterated the command that we are all his creation with power from the Holy Spirit, right back to the beginning of this section. With power from the Holy Spirit. If the Hebrew are his chosen people, is there a change of perspective or a widening of the vision of his original plan? Or is it that we just didn't understand the original plan when he was talking to Abram? Because he told us. It was not unclear. Peter's vision in Acts 10:9-16 has been bestowed with multiple meanings over the millennia. That's the one where the sheets come down with the unclean. Okay, you remember that vision? He's sent to speak to Cornelius, that centurion. And before he gets there, he sees these sheets coming down with all the unclean in it. I wonder if I did a person-to-person survey, which I don't even have time to in this congregation. If I did a person-to-person survey with each person individually, what your interpretation of that coming down means. There are as many interpretations. Okay? In context, the most providential explanation refers to the nations that are not Hebrew. Because why is he going there? Is he going there to eat a meal with them? Maybe. But that's not his primary point. He's going there to share the holiness of God. The salvation. He's going there to share salvation. That's why my sister, who's an Adventist, gets so incredibly angry with me. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway. Would get so incredibly angry with me because I happen to like pork chops. And being a good old Baptist, I was brought up that that's what it was talking about. I'm not going to tell you it's not. I'm not going to tell you it is. I'm not going to tell you it's not. Peter first received a call to visit Cornelius, the Goya centurion of the Italian cohort, as they were both praying. You get that? They were both praying. Cornelius was praying. Peter was praying. How many? Well, I don't know. There have been many times that I've prayed about something, and then I've gone to talk to somebody and found out they were praying about the same thing at about the same time. But God never answers prayer, right? Oops. Yes, he does. While there are scriptures in the Torah and in the prophets telling Hebrews the Hebrew to avoid the Goya, there are foolishly dangerous conditions that we try to put into some things because we want them to come out the way we want them to do. Mark, I told you last week I wasn't going to touch this last week, so I'm going to minutely touch it today. Mark chapter 16, verse 18 is another of many scriptures that appears to provoke very ignorant behavior. Do you remember what Mark 16 says after it says that you're going to go, that you are to go and bring others into the kingdom? That's Mark, Luke. I'm in Luke 1. See, there's Mark 16. And these signs will accompany those who have believed in my name. They will cast out demons. They will speak with new tongues. We can get along with that one, right? Okay? They will pick up serpents. I hate snakes. Me and Indiana Jones. You know, there's something about Indiana in there. I hate snakes. And I don't care if that snake's going to bite me or not. I don't care if Jesus Christ has a hold of my hand. I'm not picking up this snake. Why might if Jesus has my hand? But I hate them. Pick up serpents and drink deadly poison, and it shall not hurt them. And they will lay hands on the sick, and they will recover. We do danger. We talk. We allow these things to come into the congregation because we don't actually stop and think and understand what's being talked about here. We observe Jesus in confrontational conversations with those who might do him harm, but handling a snake or drinking poison because he can. But see, that comes down to the same kind of thing when we start trying to force people to follow our desires and our ways on what was in. Well, we know what was in those sheets when they were coming down, but what does it mean? I will tell you this much. God does not change his mind. God does not change his mind. And if he said somewhere in here that you were not supposed to do something forever to the vanishing point, he never changed his mind. Now that's a part of the study this morning that I did not do. I did not go back here and look because I probably have to change my eating habits. I did not go back here and read and see that when he talks about not eating meat, not eating animals with certain hooves, does that say forever? Or a period of time? Or just left open? You all are welcome to look at that up this week if you want to. I'm going to have to if I let you do it though, aren't I? However, I can't stop you from doing it either. I don't know. But he specifically calls us to be his witness often when we are outside of our comfort zone. My comfort zone in talking about the things of God is here. My other comfort zone is when I am in a place with other people who are also talking about it. I have a very hard time just popping it in there somewhere. Like I'm sure some of you, I'm not even going to say many, I don't know how many of you do it though, but some of you do too. You know, just walk up to the guy on the street back when Kennedy was sending people, Pastor Kennedy, not President Kennedy, when Pastor Kennedy was sending people